Hey, what's up, nerds? English Dave here with my co-host Rocket Mike, and we're here to do another review. Today we're doing Promising Young Woman. This stars Carrie Mulligan and will be released on demand and in theaters December 25th. But before we get into all of that, what's up, Mike?
What's up?
Yeah, I was getting too overzealous, getting straight into the movie. I forgot to do proper introductions. I've been talking to you for the last 10 minutes. I forget the listeners have me listening to it. But yeah, we're here to do Promising Young Woman. Like I said, it is available on demand and in theaters. I feel like we have to kind of give a disclaimer here. Mike and I, because of what we do, we were privileged enough to see this movie at home. The studio sent us screenings for this movie. However, we recognize that many of you do not have that opportunity. So that being said, no matter what we say about this film, if you do decide to see it in theaters, please be careful, be safe. We're living in times where COVID is hitting people hard, and it is not that serious. Just want to put that out there first before we start this. I think this is the first movie we're reviewing in a while that is available mostly in theaters instead of on streaming. So I just want to put that out there.
It's like, hey, at least we can tell you, like if this is worth even going seeing. Even then, like still, take all the precautions that you need and don't feel like this is something you need to rush to. No movie is worth it.
No movie is worth it. Not at all. That's the thing. And of course, this is going to vary from location to location. So please check wherever you are, whatever the rules are in your locations, and be safe. That being said, let's get straight into it, Mike. The synopsis is as follows. A young woman traumatized by a tragic event in her past seeks out vengeance against those who cross her path. And we'll start as we always do. Mike, had you seen this trailer before I told you to see it, and what were your expectations going in?
Yeah. I do remember seeing this trailer. Maybe honestly, it felt like a year ago. 2020 could have just been 2 days ago, for all I know. But I do remember seeing this trailer, and I thought it was leaning towards more of like a slasher film.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's like really going for revenge in the deepest way. It doesn't get to that horror point, but it still sends a very strong message, and it's almost it's a very interesting lesson to not only for young men, and actually all men of all ages, but to women, to say that there's no reason why you can't do this either. But it's also just being like, own yourself. Know not to put yourself in this situation, because here are the fucking predators that are out there to this day. And even anyone that says they are the nicest guy, you don't know their full selves. And I don't even think they do either.
Yeah, no, this is one of those movies that, from the trailer, you do see it plays out this like revenge a tale of this woman of because of things that have happened to her and around her. And initially, I'm going to be open to you, Mike. Initially, I was trying to do this review with one of the ladies on the Nerdy Bunch, because I felt this is, from the trailer, I thought, okay, this is a movie that women will enjoy and women want to see. And I wanted to have a female voice on the podcast. So you are not my first or second choice on this podcast, Mike. It's only because the ladies couldn't do it. However, that being said, after seeing the movie, I think it's actually better that it's two guys doing it.
I think every guy should see this movie.
I went in thinking this is a movie that women would also enjoy, and I came out thinking, no, this is a movie that every man has to watch. Yes. I think it's a cautionary tale that everyone should watch, but I think at the very least, every male of all ages should watch. I agree with you on that one, and I'm glad that the two of us are doing it. I really enjoyed this movie. I think there's some really great parts to it. I had some nitpicks, which unfortunately I'll talk about in spoilers section, which the nitpicks for me are nitpicks in its purest form, in the fact that when I look at it through a certain lens, it's a nitpick. But then when I look at it through the lens of this being a cautionary tale, then the nitpicks aren't so much there, because there's an element of heightened reality to this film, right? And that kind of makes it more of a cautionary tale than a realistic story. The themes it deals with are real, but the way it plays out has almost kind of like a heightened reality aspects to it. And I think that's what kind of, in one way you can look at it as a criticism, another way you can say, well, that's what heightens the cautionary tale aspects of it. But before we get into all of that, let's start with the main actress, Carrie Mulligan. For me, she's an actress that, you hear about Carrie Mulligan a lot, but I personally I've never had any any opinions for and against her. I just heard that she's a great actress. In this film, she got my attention.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, okay, I see what everyone's talking about now with Carrie Mulligan. You know, this film gives her a range to kind of play with, and I think she really nails it really well. I believe the character. What did you think of Carrie Mulligan's performance in this?
I think I'm like you. She was definitely typecast a lot in previous films. I was just watching An Education, I think, last week,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and she definitely plays her type. You know, it's a very young, innocent girl, but she's trying to, you know, grow faster than her peers and friends. So, you know, she starts dating an older guy, and that's An Education. In this, I feel like it's the reverse, and now, you know, she's already lived, you know, an adult life, and she's going kind of like taking for lack of a better phrase, a step back to deal with the past and everything that's happened to her and those that she knows. So it's a very much more darker side of her that we've never seen before. And she plays it off very well because she has a very, you know, pretty innocent face that tells I am not a danger to anyone. And so to have that secret, to have her, you know, have this strategy that she's using is a great side. And it's made me favor her in this role more than any movie that she's done.
Agreed.
So I agree like that. She definitely stands out in this. And I think once this gets released, she's going to start getting a lot more recognition. And I mean, I can almost see some awards being, at least some nominations thrown her way eventually.
This cast also kind of has a lot of recognizable names that spread throughout, but in small roles in weird ways. You know, we have people like Adam Brody, we have Jennifer Coolidge, even Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and even some actors I don't want to say because it's kind of fun to be like, oh snap, I didn't know so and so was in this movie.
Okay, good. I won't say them then because you don't see them until the end, like the last few scenes, and you're like, oh my god.
Exactly, and I feel like it was kind of fun to kind of see these characters. But I think
for sure,
even you even have actors of all ranges, and I think they do a good job of being in the film without drawing attention away from Carey Mulligan's character. You know, as much as you're like, oh, it's that actor, you still see the character. You're not so much enveloped in the actor as opposed to the character. And I think they do a very good job because, again, all these, especially the male actors, right? A lot of famous male actors or semi-famous male actors in this playing roles that make you uncomfortable. But that's the point, right? It's to feel uncomfortable. Which brings us to the narrative and the themes of this movie. You know, the themes of this movie deal with rape culture and not just that, but the idea that a woman can go through something and nobody believes her. You know, that what I like about this film in terms of the plot and the themes is that it's not saying anything new, which is kind of sad, right? At the same time, right? Because it's just reminding you.
Because it's not said enough.
Exactly, that's the thing. It's reminding you what still happens. You know, certain things you're like, that still happens. No, it's almost. You know, I was talking to my wife about it. It's reminiscent of what's been happening this year with the exposure of race relations and the systemic racism that's happening, that happens around the world and it's been happening throughout history. This reminds you of that. Like, you know, the movie doesn't just play into, oh, men suck and men are horrible. It goes deeper into the bigger reasons why this is happening. You know, the systemic nature of it, what people make excuses. You know, it reminded me of when Trump was accused of groping a woman. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. I just grab her by the pussy and it's easy. You know, like, it shows us how those kind of people get away with it.
Yeah. And then they feel like it's okay to continue doing it again because no one ever confronts them about it. There's no consequences.
Right? The system allowed it. And not just that, not just confront them. The system actively protects it. Yeah. Right? It's like, oh, but these young men, if we say something, you know, this could ruin their lives. Yeah, no shit, but they ruined someone else's life. You know,
like that's not what they signed up for.
Exactly.
You know, they chose to do this, and so they must know that. Yeah, your life is being ruined because you're ruining someone else's life.
It reminded me of here's a shameless plug. We recently did a Back to the Future podcast on American Psycho, and the elements of it reminded me of that. You know, like he would be one of those guys. Yeah. You know, he went to the school,
privileged to just go off and do what he wants, and then trying to towards the end, almost like push the boundary of how much he can get away with by going to a very extreme limit. And then still, at the end of the day, nothing happens.
Yeah, and that's
and he's disappointed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it reminds you, and this is where I say the movie's more of a cautionary tale. And when I look at it from the view of cautionary tale, I like it better than when I look at it from a quote unquote realistic lens, because there are elements of the movie that kind of its focus isn't as broad as it wants to be. And it sounds like a criticism, but it really isn't, because the world in which it plays with is a more economically privileged world, right? It's these rich kids and that kind of privileged, rich environment, and how these kind of things go unpunished or swept under the rug within these environments. Like people go to these rich schools. It also reminded me of the recent story of, I forget the actress who paid for her daughter to go to school. You know, things like that. So it's like, people with money. You know, so and as a criticism, some people might not relate as much to this movie because it deals with this world of people who are rich and privileged, right? As opposed to being a more broader a look at it. Which again, but I think that works because of its cautionary tale nature. It's looking at an extreme situation, you know, and I think that worked well with it. I want to talk about cinematography. I think for some interesting reason, this was a beautifully shot film.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the way the let's call it the cabin scene. You know, that's a very, I think, general enough term. Was shot really well. It was almost like something between Gucci commercial, like something for like a cologne, but also like a music video. But then it had this very like horror element to it, maybe kind of. It was a mix of many things that I've never seen before, and it definitely stood out. Like, oh, this is a style that we haven't seen before. I loved it. I'm actually now have to go back and learn who that cinematographer was to have that image.
Yeah, it was really well done. I think constantly throughout the film, I was aware, but that's only because, you know, I'm a passionate filmmaker. But it's done in a way that you're very much aware of the conscious cinematography, right? Nothing is done by mistake. Nothing in the camera is done by mistake. Everything, there's a lot of thought put into everything. I think they did a very, very good job of it. And even using the cinematography to kind of play with expectations, right? There's a sequence where you assume she's killed somebody and you're not quite sure whether she killed somebody or not. And I don't go into specifics of it, but that's sold really well because of cinematography. How the camera kind of showcases the scene. I think it's done very, very well. And I also really like the score. You know, they take a lot of poppy songs from the late 90s, early 2000s and remix them in an interesting way. But it fits the tone of the scene that's happening right there and then. I thought that was really done very, very well.
By the way, the cinematographer's name is, I might mispronounce his last name, Benjamin Cruson. I'm sorry, Krasoon. Okay. He doesn't have a long list of work, but this one will obviously stand out as probably his more popular, better ones.
One nitpick I have, and again, another nitpick I have with this film, and again, doesn't take away my feelings towards the film, is that I felt like some aspects of the pacing, where it's kind of like slow fast, you know, where it's like the beginning of the film felt like a very different film to the ending of the film in some places. You know, I think it was a bit sporadic in the pacing, and even some of the characterization. You know, it takes a while for you to understand the driving force behind her actions, because that's slowly trickled to you over the course of the film. But I think sometimes you kind of stand back where it's like, and again, this could be done on purpose. You know, that's why I say it's a nitpick. You almost question: is she a hero or is she turning to a villain? In some places, you know, because some things that she's willing to do in order to get her way, you're like, it's kind of questionable.
This is not a spoiler because I think it was even in the trailer, but there is this like very Joaquin Phoenix Joker moment, you know, where it's almost like frame for frame, she's sitting in front of a mirror, makeup around her, and then she smears like lipstick to make like this like half, almost a smile, you know. It reminded me exactly of the Joker from the most recent one, which then puts in that element like, is this like an anti-hero or is this a real villain? But I still can't see her as a villain in this because it comes from such a place that it's like, no, the real villains are, these predators, these men that have done all these things.
And again, I say that as a means to say it's not. I don't think it's an accident. I think it's on purpose, and I think it's done to kind of have the debates, right? It's not so clean cut way like, well, is she the hero of the story, or is this the beginning of a vigilante? There's elements of the story where you're thinking, what is her long term goal with this?
Yeah.
Before certain events change in her life, because there's two kind of because you jump into the movie at one point and another inciting incident happens. There's almost like two inciting incidents in the film, and where you meet her, you're like, okay, and I think, try to circle back a bit. One of the reasons why I say this is probably done on purpose is because the movie also smartly shows us how this affects her relationships with like her parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the parents are like, they don't know what she's doing, but they know that there's something up with her. Where is she going? She's going all hours of the night. She's away, blah blah. What are you doing? And it shows that like her focus on her focus on her goal is also affecting her relationships with her parents and things like that. Right. And I really enjoyed that they showed that, because most movies wouldn't have showed that aspect of it.
And it shows that she's changed since she started all this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. But just a quick, I guess, I have a prediction for when this comes out.
Okay.
That the audience reaction is going to be very negative. I'm just going to probably assume I'm right, that a lot of conservative men are going to find this offensive because they're going to get defensive and claiming that that's not me. I would never do something like that. And that's exactly the message. I'm like, yeah, says the same guy is doing this. Like, I don't do this. I'm a nice guy. And you're going to hear that over and over, and it's going to get bashed by anyone who will try to defend themselves and claiming that that's not them. And really, you're just giving yourself away by doing that.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's a cautionary tale. I think it's a great cautionary tale. I think that's the end of our spoiler-free segment. I think this is definitely a movie that every guy should see. Everyone should see. I think it's a great movie. I also like the idea, quickly, that it doesn't just focus on men.
Mm-hmm.
We see some women as well who are at fault for the overall of what happened. It shows that the system, it shows that the system is bigger than just these men, right? And that's the problem. That's why they get away with it. I enjoyed the movie. I think it's a great movie whenever you get the chance to see it. Like we said at the beginning of this podcast, be careful how you see it. It will also be available on demand and in theaters. So if you really want to see it, I'd recommend seeing it on demand. It's not a movie that you're like,
if anything, if you can't see it right away, it's something to look forward to later on.
Exactly.
Definitely get a chance if you can to see this, but only at the safest way to do it.
That being said, we're going to go into spoiler segments right now. Anything to talk about in spoilers for you, Mike?
Well, I mean, I know we kind of touched on a little bit, but I'm like that ending, that whole scene that led up to the bachelor party. I didn't see it taking the direction that we would lose her, before the end of the movie. It's the ending was kind of, it was bittersweet, like you don't want to see anything happen to her, because she's already lost her friend, and she's already seen the dark side of every person she's, manipulated into taking home. So the ending now with the whole releasing of the phone and everything, and the twist that Bo Burnham was there on that night and was caught on the recording on the phone, was a great twist. Kate actually called that one out before it happened. I'm like, no, but yeah, that makes sense, because he said that he didn't really know Al. He was like, yeah, maybe I kind of know. It was like, that was just that little hint, and then they let it go. And it's like, that's gonna come back.
No, I really like that, because it also plays on the idea that all of us, every guy, it doesn't matter who you are. When you're in school, even if you're not that kind of guy, you knew those kind of guys.
Oh, 100%.
And sometimes you excuse them. You're like, oh, they're just those guys. You might make subtle excuses for them. And this also highlights that that's part of the problem too. You shouldn't, even though they're not your close friends, the fact that you just make excuses even on the smallest level validates them. You just laugh at a joke, whatever.
That's exactly who Max Greenfield from New Girl. That's the person he plays. He's like, everything's fine. I'm gonna be the one that covers for this. You didn't do anything wrong. I'll be. You're not at fault. This is not your fault. And then like when they end up burning the body, you look in his face and it looks like he's done this before.
I was thinking, I was like, damn, how many times have you done this before?
Because also look how well that they stacked that wood. I'm like, was that pre-made for exactly this kind of scenario? Because he's looking and he's like, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, let me kick the arm back
in. Yeah, it's like, okay, almost missed a spot there. While Chris Lowell, who played Al Monroe, he's just like still crying, worried, almost throwing up at the look at this. But it was so, I feel bad because it was the morning after they found the body, or that Joe was thing. He found the body, and it's not believing it. The interaction between them two was so fucking funny. Like how you turn this such like a down, dark moment that she was just killed, and somehow it just went right back into a comedy because their reactions from each other were like Max is like, fucking kill the stripper.
Right. In fact, that could almost be a beginning of a comedy film, right?
It really was. It
like The Hangover.
Like, I feel bad for laughing, but why is it so funny right now? I shouldn't be laughing.
My nitpick I had earlier, one of them being that, like you just said, this focuses more on a certain type of socially privileged kind of group of people, right? And especially like these guys go to cabin in the woods. They clearly all have money. They all clearly come from money, but it also highlights how that money has helped them get away with stuff over the time. But my nitpick over, I wish we saw more, because the movie, as great as it is, at some points it could get criticized of preaching to the converted in some elements, and in some, again, I say this very lightly as nitpicks, and I felt like it's telling, like, the audience, most people going to watch this are people who know, who are aware that these things are going on. It's almost like only black people watching movies about racism. It's like, yeah, we know. You're telling us what we already know.
Right.
And especially because like it dabbles in the whole systemic nature of how women are created, but it almost doesn't want to break down the system as opposed to the individuals. I think the movie kind of it focuses more on the individuals who have succumbed to the system, as opposed to saying, hey, let's try and take down and fight this system. I don't know how you make that movie, and this is why this is a very small nitpick, but it's just something that I was aware of. I was just like,
I think in terms of like, yeah, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take more than just her to take down the system of that. But I think her intention was to start with the individual and try to get into as many heads as possible to say that you can't get away with this anymore because I'm not the only person doing this. She mentions in one scene that like there's someone out there that brings a pair of scissors and she'll cut your dick off. And it's like, you're lying. He's like, go ahead and try it. Go out the next time. You just try. And just to put that idea, whether it's true or not, in their head will now make them hesitate any actions moving forward. In fact, I'm like, if I have a daughter, I'm definitely teaching her to do this. I'm like, yeah, I studied acting. I'll teach you how to act drunk. We'll definitely, put this into play and you'll see. And now you're going to get revenge if you ever need to.
And that's my other nitpick. You just kind of brought me to another nitpick. Beginning of the film, you see all her marks to insinuate that she's doing this to a lot of guys, right? She's been doing this for a while. We kind of jump into the middle of her kind of mission. My nitpick, because I was watching this film, I was like, she would be dead halfway through this film. How many, it's just, my only problem was that every guy that she confronted ended up becoming a punk who's like, okay, I'm sorry. No guy, except for the very, very end when he's fighting for his life.
Yeah.
A lot of guys would be very physical in a very bad way. And I think there's a problem to kind of, that it doesn't highlight that as much until the end, because it can make some women believe, oh, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. Many guys won't just cower. They'll be fearful, but they'll react physically. Yeah. Unfortunately, they would react physically. And I think the movie should have highlighted aspects of that a bit, because, she's not like she's some like, she's a small lady. Many guys wouldn't just step back and find her threatening just from, especially because in the movie, we never see her bring out a weapon or anything like that.
Right? Yeah, that's also what made me question that last scene. I'm like, she's tying this guy up and she's not even considering that he could break out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't have anything, no mace, no taser, not even a gun.
There's a whole bunch of guys downstairs. Like,
oh yeah, true. And like, what if one of them didn't
yeah,
get knocked out, or what if she missed somebody?
right.
You know,
And
so many scenarios that could have gone wrong. It goes to show that she didn't think of everything.
Which is why I say, when depending on how the lens I look at this film, when I look at it as a cautionary tale, I can forgive all this stuff because again, it's a cautionary tale of what can happen on the extreme levels of things. This is why it focuses on a specific group of rich kids. This is why it takes the path that it does. But then when I look at it through a quote unquote realistic lens, I'm like, I understand what she was doing, but this is a path that would definitely lead to her death well before the cabin scene. Like if anyone, so it's like one of those films like, yeah, don't do this. If this is not the way to go about doing things, by going out every night at a club and pretending to be drunk so that you can stop a guy from raping you. One of those guys won't stop. That's the problem. One of those guys will not stop, and that's the unfortunate side of it. And I think the movie could have kind of addressed that a little bit, considering that it's set. She probably did this to like almost 100 men. Like not one of them was that physical on you. I find that, which is crazy scary. That I find that hard to believe that a man wouldn't do that, which is so sad to say that.
Especially if you got one that's kind of already pretty drunk too.
Yeah.
And now there's like not much of a filter or a need to hold back any inappropriate actions. So it's even more dangerous,
Because I think the danger lies in the fact that all these men, when they're exposed, they act like punks.
Yeah,
and it's like that's not true. I mean, they're all men will be punks.
It is a real reaction that
yes.
There are many that will.
Yes,
I'm sure react that way, and because it is scary. Imagine seeing someone just suddenly become completely sober after appearing to be shit-faced. You're like, how did that happen, and what's going on? I'm like, it's been like this whole time. Did you just suddenly take something? What's going? Yeah, it's a mind fuck, and so you're going to be questioning everything at that point, and you're going to get defensive, and you feel like you got to lash out. Maybe I don't ever want to be put in that situation for sure.
But again, all in all, I really enjoyed this film. I think for me, it's one of my best films of 2020.
For sure.
The year's been a lackluster year. I think even if it was a regular year, it'd still be in my top lists of films. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Me too.
Anything else before we go?
No. Again, like just take the time to get a chance to see this if you can. Don't rush, but I think we can, for anyone who's yet to see it, can look forward to seeing it.
Agreed. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Rocket Mike.
Thank you.
My name is English Dave. You guys have any opinions on the film, or you want to check out any of the other films that we're going to be reviewing, follow us on social media at The Nerdy Bunch. We have, I think for our Christmas Back to the Future, we did Home Alone, so revisit that and listen to that podcast. It's really, really good. My name is English Dave. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, Mike,
keep it nerdy.
Keep it nerdy, nerds. Peace.